Good morning. If you could, maybe find a seat and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. I didn't mean to kill the conversation to that extent. But don't spill that. You know, while they're finding their seat, when we were discussing this, I was visiting with Brian May, who's the president of Angelo State. Every year, they're listed in the Chronicle's best places to work. And I asked him, what's the secret? He said, liquor. He buys wine and drinks whenever they have a large gathering. I thought we were going to do that this year, Noel. I guess it's too early. Well, next year. Well, let me say thank you for being here. And one of the most important points I want to make as I get started is to express my thanks to you. If you could travel with me, and I'm sure as the deans and others, development officers, as Paul would know, when you go out and visit with other people, you hear such a positive story about tech. And it makes me realize, in fact, I wrote to Grace last week, and I said, I need to say thank you more often. I was in Dallas-Fort Worth area for the game, and I spoke to a high school there and a couple Rotary clubs. And one morning at a Rotary club in Flower Mound, two parents came up to me. Their son had started here at Texas Tech. Neither of them had come to Tech, but they said, as they went around to schools, and then when he enrolled, he said, if we could say, what is our impression of tech? It's the phrase, how can we help you? They said that whether they're talking to staff or faculty, that was the common theme. How can we help you? How can we help you? And that's what you do. To the staff, the faculty, I can't say thank you enough for that. Yesterday, we had the President's office hours. And one young man came in. He's a student in the Rawls College of Business. But he came by just to say, I want to let you know how helpful everybody is on this campus. He's a freshman. He said, staff, faculty, he said, one day I was in the science building and I was lost. And there was a faculty member, she was sitting in her office, and she put down what she was doing, and she could see that I didn't know where to go, and she came out and said, how can I help you? And so those are the things that make this such a very, very special place. Anna Navarro was here for the Celebrate Diversity event 2 nights ago, I think it was. This is homecoming week. Everything's kind of a blur. And as I was visiting with her afterwards, she said, this is a very special place. She said, I go to a lot of universities. Dr. Carol Sumler did a fabulous job in organizing that event, and there was a very engaging, warm atmosphere there. And she says, as I go to other schools, they see diversity as kind of checking the box. But here you see it in practice, you feel it. And she said, I have never been on a more beautiful campus. And that is a testament, I think, to the wonderful team we have in operations and staff and the job that Noel does with them. So I want to begin by saying thank you. Now, we're approaching our 100th birthday, and this fall we'll be announcing the formation of a lot of committees to help us prepare for that event in 1923. And so we've had some preliminary meetings, but there will be the Alumni Association, faculty, staff, students, anybody who wants to be part of it. It's going to be a big deal. And we'll be probably putting those committees together this fall. So if you're interested in participating, we're going to be we'll be publishing a book, a couple books, one for the coffee table, one with more substantive history, a lot of different events to celebrate the 100th birthday of this university. Let us know, and we'll make sure you can be part of that. We're going to begin today with a little video that kind of captures the sense of what does 95 years mean. And you might recognize the voice behind this, Barry Corbin, who is an alum. And so this video does have a little data and I don't want this presentation to be a data dump. I've been accused of that in the past by my wife and Al Sacco. And so there is some good stuff in there to pay attention to, but let's begin with this video right now, and Chris has promised me this is going to run perfectly.
"1923, hard to believe, almost 100 years. A small outpost in the middle of the South Plains. A small regional college serving West Texas. But of course, all that's changed now. Texas Tech University, from a regional to a global player on the world stage, because from here it's possible.
I appreciate Chris and marketing and Office of Communications putting that together. You know, there'll be much more of that sort of thing as we try to give a sense of what we were, what we are, where we're going. I want to begin with just a little bit of data here. Some of this was on that slide. So, you know, this year we did have our 10th consecutive record enrollment. And to put that into perspective, I don't know what the data is for fall 2018, but in the United States, through fall 2017, there were 6 consecutive years of decline in enrollment at universities. And it's not as if we live in the most populated area. So how is it that tech is growing? I think also to put that in perspective, in 2008 at Texas Tech University, we had fewer students than we did in 2003. We went through 5 consecutive years. So in some ways, the growth is a reflection of the strength of the brand of Texas Tech, but also to the efforts of a lot of people. This Sunday we'll be at Houston for the Top Scholar event. Last Monday it was Dallas, and that means a lot of faculty and staff travel to take the message of Texas Tech. But also it has to be about the quality and the experience you get here, and that's a reflection of what you do. We're not growing for the sake of growth, and I think we're getting very close to our capacity. You're going to see an increase in our enrollment at the regional sites, but I suspect by 2025 there may be 42,000 students on this campus. I made a joke yesterday that Ken Hance asked me a while back, are you going to hit 40,000 by 2020? Because if you don't, I'm going to set myself on fire in Memorial Circle. So I did tell a few people that we will be selling tickets. And we're going to come in at 39,990. But this class is distinguished by quality. Over 6,100 freshmen. 2 years ago, we had 4,700. This year, our SAT still went up. Over 26 national merit finalists. Last year, 16. Year before, 7. Presidential scholars. Those are students that have over 1,200 on their SAT in their top 25% of the class. This year we had over 2,900. Last year about 2,500. A year ago, a little over 1,000. That said, the competition for students is intense. Nationally, you see a decline in the high school population in the Northeast and Midwest. Who's coming into Texas? Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. We're not growing our top 10% like we'd like to, and so what we're going to do next year, we're increasing the top award for presidential scholars. It will go from $28,000 to $38,000. And student debt and cost is a concern, and that's part of our effort to deal with that. We've also grown because of our retention. So this year, that first year, that second year, and that third year retention, all three of those are records for Texas Tech. And that's particularly significant when you look at the size of the class we're talking about. Now, where we haven't seen much progress is in our 6-year rate. We did go up 1% this last year to 60%, but our goal is to get that up to 70%. So hopefully, as these retention efforts and these cohorts go through there, we'll see an improvement there. I'm going to say more about faculty and staff when I get to the initiatives and priorities. But in the last 5 years, we've increased the full-time faculty by 24%. Tenure and tenure track is up by 9.5%. If you go back to 10-year period, the tenure and tenure track is only up by 10%. Full-time faculty is only up by 27%. What that means is there wasn't much of an addition to the faculty and staff from 2008 to 12. Since 2012, as we began to grow, we really have added to faculty and staff, but there's still much more to be done there. We have not grown the staff at the rate we're growing faculty. In the last 5 years, we've only increased the staff about 5%, and that will be an initiative that I'll discuss later on when I get to our priorities. If you want to go to the next slide. There was an article earlier, in fact it was last week, the Pew Research Center conducted a survey in the United States, and more than 60% of the people in this country think that higher ed is going in the wrong direction. I don't know how many of you have seen that. And last year, there was a guy, his name is Clayton Christensen, he's at Harvard. He was speaking at an event on disruption and innovation in universities in Austin. And he made a statement that he thinks that in the coming years, half of the universities in this country, there's 4,000 if you count community colleges, will be bankrupt or closed because we're not responding to innovation. About a couple of years ago, a guy named Kevin Carey wrote a book, The End of College, The Universe of Everywhere. And he had just taken a massively open online course at MIT. And he said, why will people be paying for the traditional residential experience when they can get courses for free from Nobel laureates? But so the case that we have to make through what we do and the message we articulate is that there are values in a residential experience you can never replace through online technology. That's an important part of what we do, and we've vastly increased our delivery of online education, the amount and the quality. But I think we always have to remember that we're here for the students and that we touch them in ways that will impact them for the rest of their lives. And so I want to give you just a few examples, I think, of what we can do that we can be proud of. Now, I want to give examples today of research that's impactful, student experiences, and the danger in this is I touch a small, small part of what we're doing. So don't sit there and get angry at me, okay? Because we could go on forever when we talk about the good. So the Provost Office has announced a new initiative called TRUE, the Center for Transformative Undergraduate Experiences. And this really replaces CalU. CalU was originally focused on undergraduate research, but what they're talking about, and they want to achieve this by 2025, every student who graduates from this school will have some sort of signature or deeper learning experience that goes beyond the classroom. And when you look at the data about this, they will say that really is what contributes to one's success, one's sense of well-being. Did you have an experience with somebody that touched your life? Even Clayton Christensen, when he was down there in Austin talking about the end of college as we know it, said, one thing online technologies will never replace is the one-to-one relationship students have with a faculty member and the personal nature of that. So the true Center for Undergraduate Experience will provide every student an opportunity for an internship, study abroad, field or laboratory experience, for something that will take place outside the usual confines of the classroom. Something else you could never do through online technology is an example given by the Burke Tech players. These are students and faculty in the J.T. Margaret and Talkington College of Visual and Performing Arts, collaborating with those in the Jim and Jerry Lynn Burkhart Center for Autism, where they work with students who are affected by autism or any of the young people there who are on the spectrum. They engage them in the experience of theater to expand their expression, their ability to express themselves. And if you could meet some of those who've gone through that program, it's truly, truly touching. Recently, I met with a group of students and Dean Margaret Williams in the Rawls Leadership Program. These are extraordinarily accomplished and successful students. This is a program that's really dedicated to developing the full student. Rigorous academics, but real-world experiences that better position them when they go into the workplace. These are the kind of examples that we're talking about when we speak of transformative learning experiences. Chris? Yesterday, I had a student who came by for the office hours. Taji is his name. That's him right there. He developed a 3D, he printed a prosthetic with a 3D printer. A grandmother here in Lubbock had a student named Toby who didn't have a complete hand. And so she contacted him and he made a prosthetic device for him, like the one he's showing to me right there. This is my office yesterday. This young child on the right, also, if you see his hand there, needs a prosthetic device. And Taji is devising a printer for him. Now, he's looking to commercialize this, but what really motivated him? Trying to do something for somebody else. I mean, and he's engaged. He had met with Kimberly Graham, the Innovation Hub and Research Park. And we have so many students who come in with ideas of what can I do for others? And increasingly, what's going on over there at the Innovation Hub and Research Park is very important for the entrepreneurial spirit that our students have. And there's a whole list of activities there. Susan Graham has done a fabulous, Kimberly Graham, Susan Graham, the speaker, has done a fabulous job with that center. And that's an important part of the exceptional learning experiences that we have. Chris? So this fall, we did open our campus at Costa Rica. I want to thank Provost Gallion. Noel Sloan was very instrumental, and especially Vice Provost Sukat Misra. Daryl James was very involved in the accreditation issues there. Sachs was just there a couple weeks ago. I remember when we started this, I went to speak to the board in executive session as provost, and they were somewhat skeptical. Why do you do this? But I think in this world in which we live, it's so important that our students be globally competent, that they have these experiences abroad, as many of the colleges, architecture and engineering in particular, emphasize. In fact, we're going to be in D.C. in a couple weeks to receive the Senator Paul Simon Award for Comprehensive Internationalization. There are 3 research schools that are being recognized: University of Florida, SUNY at Stony Brook, and Texas Tech. That's good company. And it really speaks to a culture of promoting internationalization, not for the purpose of checking off a box, but for really preparing our students as they go into this world. That's also part of the QEP. That was part of our reaffirmation. Bear our banners far and wide, communicating in a global society. Not just for the sake of communication, but more understanding of the cultures that students will be working in. I think our global presence has been reflected in our increase in global rankings. And I'm not going to say much about rankings in general, but I want to make this point. There are 5 major global rankings. And I think that's kind of the new standard by which we need to be evaluating ourselves. In 2014, Texas Tech was only ranked in 1 of those major rankings. And I should say the U.S. News and World Report global rankings didn't exist, so 1 out of 4. Now we're ranked in all 5. Last year, for the Center for World University Rankings, we moved up to 437. They ranked 18,000 schools. So that's pretty good, top 2%. The QS World Rankings, they only ranked 980 universities around the world. We'd never been ranked before, so we show up 701 to 750. Now, that's not a chant you're going to hear at a sporting event. We're number 700, we're number 700. But keep it in perspective. And then the Shanghai Rankings, which is probably the most respected of all of those, we moved up from the category of 501 to 600 to 400 to 500. What matters in these rankings? They look at the impact of research, the amount of research, and they measure that impact and its value through citations. They do look at some student success metrics, but it's a much more balanced view of the total contribution of a university than something like U.S. News and World Report, and we won't discuss that. But with regard to rankings, I would say something. Where does Tech shine? Well, we look at return on investment. So last year, we were not ranked until a year ago in the Forbes Best Value Colleges. They only rank 300 schools, United States. There are about a little over 3,000 baccalaureate institutions. And we were ranked for the first time a year ago at 298. This year, we moved up to 138. In Money Magazine, we moved up from 260 to 242. And what do they look at? They look at the cost of education, the employment rate, what the students earn, basically a return on their experience. And that's where Tech does really, really well. So when I talk about rankings, that never really captures what we really are trying to do with respect to our research. And I'd like to give you some examples. I could tell you that in the last 2 years, our total research expenditures have hovered around 180 million. Our restricted research expenditures around 60. In 2008, our total research expenditures were about 52 million. Now we're 180. That's a tremendous increase. Where we haven't made the real progress we want is in terms of federal, and that's something we continue to work at. But that will never really capture what we're trying to do. We're trying to do research and engage in scholarship and creative activity that has an impact for this part of the state, for the state and the nation. And in some ways, we're perfectly located in this area. This is a perfect laboratory to address problems of global significance, issues of water, sustainability, energy. And so as a few examples I want to highlight here, Dr. Elisa Wong, she, working with other faculty and students, developed this Liberators Project. It resulted in an app, a web page that's really neat if you go look at it, a book that was published by Texas Tech Press, and a museum exhibit that's been traveling around the country. When it was first exhibited, it was in the Capitol building at Dallas, and it was so neat to walk in there and see that project that was done by Texas Tech faculty and students, and what Elisa did. As you may be aware, last spring, we hired our first NAS member. We have like 4 or 5 National Academy members, but this was the first member of the National Academy of Science. It was made possible by a $5 million award from the Governor's University Research Initiative, and we had to match that. It will bring 6 other faculty and a number of graduate students here. But Dr. Herrera Estrella was named by Scientific American and one of the 100 most influential scientists in biotechnology in the world. He's coming here. And when we were interviewing him, and you may have been here for his reception, he mentioned that he has been courted by top universities. He said a top 10 school. That happened to be Harvard. And we asked him, why would you come here and not go to Harvard? And the point he made is, I can build something here. I love a challenge. And I corrected him, you mean opportunity. And there is a sense, there's a very good trajectory here, but also he is in the right place if you're looking at plant stress and the issues of environment because of Bayer Crop Science, BASF, and formerly Monsanto. Another National Academy member we hired in recent years in the Whitaker College of Engineering was Danny Reibel. And what does he work in? Water. The effect of contaminants, conservation of water, an issue that's terribly important here in West Texas, but also this country. That's the kind of research we want to be doing, things that really do matter and make a difference. Dr. Su Shin over in the College of Human Sciences, she heads up the apparel design and manufacturing program there. And what is she working on? Design of clothing for people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers. What a terribly important thing to be doing in this country at this time. And what wonderful work she is doing. So those are just some of the faculty. I mean, there are hundreds of good stories out there that I could talk about, but they sort of typify the kind of work we want to be doing. And I've failed to mention many other things. I want to make a quick comment about athletics. That's an important part of the tech experience. We had a great year last year. Kirby Hokut was named as the National Athletic Director. I think it's called the National Association of College Directors of Athletics. Where is Kirby? Is Kirby here? Okay, I guess he's not. Oh, there he is. We also had Tim Tatlock, National Baseball Coach of the Year. I think we had many teams finish in the Elite Eight, but also athletics has a real emphasis on the complete development of the student. The Marshall Sharp Leadership Academy is very important, but they achieved their highest ever GPA, and they're a real point of pride for the university. I think we're all aware of how devastating mistakes can be in athletics, and I'm very proud that our athletics program presents the best possible image for Texas Tech. I'll make a few comments about new initiatives and legislative issues. Much has been said about the School of Veterinary Medicine. When we submitted our legislative appropriation request this year, we included an exceptional item for funding in this biennium to start up the vet school. You may recall that we got $4.17 million in the last biennium. As we move forward, we're going to need $17 million in this next biennium. We intend to request the special item support through the next 3 bienniums, and then it will go away, and the vet school would exist on its own tuition generated in the formula funding. What will not happen is there will not be a subsidy of the vet school from research dollars here at Texas Tech. That was one thing the board really wanted, and we've developed a model. It's a new model that is going to be more efficient. The cost of education will only be about $21,000 a year. The national average is more like 25 or so. And it's going to address a need in the industry, a need in this state, and also provide access. I'm going to say a few things about that. If you were to look at a heat map of where veterinarians are, they're all along the I-35 corridor. People come into the state, like about 1,000 a week, and what do they bring? Cats and dogs. That's where the business is. About 20% of those who are licensed in Texas last year were licensed by Texas A&M, one of the best veterinary schools in the world. But almost an equal number were licensed at international schools, mostly in the Caribbean, and the other 60% came from out of state. Many of those were Texas residents who go elsewhere to get that degree, and they come back with debt. Internationally, $250,000. Out of state, more like something less. They have to go where they can earn a living to help compensate for that debt. It's typically not in rural areas. Amarillo is kind of in the center of gravity of the dairy and feedlot industry. And the closest vet schools to those areas are in Wyoming, Colorado State, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. College Station is further away. There's a need to serve that industry, and that's what this school would do. But also, if you look at the applications, there are many, many who want to pursue a degree in veterinary science and can't get in to A&M. So those are some of the issues that guide us. We've raised $90 million for the building. The exceptional item support will get this thing started, and beyond that, it will be self-sustaining. One of the biggest issues we face in this country is that of mental health. So last year, we entered into a collaboration with the Health Sciences Center to start the Texas Tech Mental Health Institute, and we hired Keno McQuinney, I don't know if you haven't met him, he's a fabulous, energetic, dynamic leader who will help coordinate this effort. We are seeking some special item support through HSC for that. We have another new special item request this year in the legislature. It's called Academic and Student Success. We're seeking $8 to $9 million to help fund student support programs here. Our increase in retention and graduation rates, really began about 4 or 5 years ago. There's been a considerable amount of financial investment there and some new practices, but we need additional support for that. I'm going to say a few things about faculty and staff. I did mention that we've added a lot of faculty in the last 5 years. In 2012, when we began to really grow our faculty, the student-faculty ratio at Texas Tech was 24 to 1. Today, it's 20 to 1. And our goal is to get that to 18 to 1. If you look at the Carnegie 81 publics, the top schools, the top half, that's where they are. So we're going to be working closely with the provost office, CFO, and the deans to help incentivize filling lines with tenure and tenure-track faculty. But in some cases, clinical faculty and professors of practice are the appropriate hire to make. We want more full-time faculty in the classroom. I'd like to see fewer classes, more classes below 20, certainly below 50, and we want full-time faculty in front of those students. So that's going to be a priority, working with the provost's office in the coming year. We also are going to need to add more staff. As I mentioned, we've only added about 5% in the past 5 years, and I think if you talk to chairs and deans, they would say that we're short in that area, and that's something we're going to focus on. I want to say just a few things about the facilities as we move forward. So we're finishing up the Experimental Sciences building. That's a $77 million project that will be done in the next year. We're well on our way on phase 1 of the Mason Theater. Phase 2 will start in the spring. That will be a fabulous new facility. We're in the 3rd year of this program. In 2016, we said we're going to put $4 million a year for 5 years into teaching laboratories and classrooms. And there's an example of some of the rater rooms that we've already addressed, and we'll be continuing that for the next 3 years. And on the horizon, we've nearly completed the fundraising for the dairy barn, and so we're going to start construction on that. That was a $2.6 million project. It's going to be a place where we can engage in collaborative activities, bring in visiting scholars, artists, and we're talking about adding on to the library. We're in discussions right now of fundraising for that. There's a picture there of the library. That's the west end. What we would like to do is add an addition to that west end that would be for student space. Libraries now are not the places where you go to be quiet. It's where you go to work. And so we'd like to add an addition there where students can engage in sort of collaborative workspace. We're in discussions about building a new science building. It would be behind chemistry and south of physics. Now, what's there? A parking lot. So we know that that is a sensitive issue, and we'll have plenty of faculty discussion about how to address that. But it would be for sciences and social sciences. We have a tuition revenue bond list. Number one on that list will be funds to work on the engineering research key. And beyond that, we're going to allow, Holden Hall will be taken over by the College of Engineering, and there's fundraising for the renovation of that. So in arts and sciences, we'll probably refurbish the science building. Some of the administration would go there. We're also refurbishing Weeks Hall. That's about a $26 million project. Some people will be located there. About a year ago, the board approved the establishment of a 501c3 under which the Innovation Hub and Research Park will operate. It will allow for a much more expeditious way of moving forward with projects, less cost of construction, and most likely we're going to lease them the land east of Quaker, south of 4th Street, and it will be there. A new VA hospital is going to go in across from the medical school, but Texas Tech sold that property, but we retain 300 feet along Indiana. We're going to be looking for more ways to generate alternative revenue streams, and that would include the possibility of retail and commercial development along Indiana, as well as on the intersection of 4th and Quaker. That would complement what's going on in the research park. So those are the projects that are out there. There's a lot planned, and hang on. One thing I haven't talked about today is our third priority. Transform lives and communities through engaged outreach and scholarship. There was an article just earlier this month in the Chronicle, and here was the title of it. Do universities value public engagement? Not much. I think we all recognize the importance of engaging the community, doing things that matter, but when push comes to shove, is it really part of our culture? Are faculty and staff incentivized and rewarded for doing these things? Now, the provost office has made this a priority. John Opperman has been appointed to a new position there that will oversee many of the different dimensions of engagement. That includes a broader conversation about what it is, why it's important, but also incentives, whether that be in merit pay or promotion. If people do these things, they should be rewarded for it. And it's part of our culture. Texas Tech was in the inaugural class in 2006 when the Carnegie Foundation identified schools as community-engaged institutions. We were one of the first. In 2015, we were also reclassified as one of 300 in the United States. So we have a good track record there, but we can do more. But you really can't capture what engagement means by just citing things like that. So we have here a little video I'm going to close with that I get choked up whenever I see this. I hope you do too. But it's about what our students are doing and the differences they make in lives through their engagement.
What does it mean to be a Red Raider? It's more than unique learning opportunities, research, and scholarship. It means an opportunity to impact others. As Texas Tech students, we do it better than the rest, taking part in activities that extend beyond the campus and into the community, like the Bayless Elementary Mentoring Program. It pairs students in our honors college with students at a local school. The Texas Tech mentors visit the elementary once a week, working on homework, playing games, and just talking with their mentees. And since 2014, these interactions have positively impacted more than 300 young students. There's Tech to Town too, a one-day event where we go out into the Lubbock community to serve, impact, and strengthen the bonds between our university and the city. Our Terry Scholars take part in annual service projects, like this one at Grace Campus, which provides transitional housing for those without. And University Student Housing has partnered with Habitat for Humanity for years, giving new and returning Red Raiders like me the opportunity to help build a house for a local family. Thanks to the JT and Margaret Talkington College of Visual and Performing Arts and the East Lubbock Promise Neighborhood, 1st through 5th graders at 4 Lubbock elementary schools don't have to spend the summer sitting at home. They can take classes in art, music, theater, and dance at the Eastside Arts Camp. Students from the college have expertise to build better lives for children, including 2 Bean elementary students, designing and developing a robotic hand and a motorized wheelchair for them. And when it comes to helping others, that barely scrapes the surface. We, as Red Raiders, have countless opportunities to connect and improve the lives of those around us. It's that commitment to enhance the community that sets us apart. Not an obligation, but a desire to do more than what's asked. It's who we are. And that's the Red Raider reputation.
There was a little blip in that video, but those students who built that prosthetic was from the Whitaker College of Engineering. So that's the message for this year. Thank you so much for what you do, and I'll be glad to visit with you. They're there at the back. No wine this year, but maybe next year we'll do this in the evening. Thank you all very, very much.